Trevor Lawrence spoke to the media. We'll dissect that, and we'll also discuss here on Locked On Jaguars why fans' opinions do matter.
You are Locked On Jaguars, your daily Jacksonville Jaguars podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
You got that right. It is your team every day here on Locked On Jaguars. We thank you for making us your first listen. You can find us wherever you get podcasts. Whether you listen to them or watch them, we will be there. Just make sure you tap in each and every day so you do not miss an episode like the Everydayers, who I'm going to shout out right now. But this episode is also brought to you by Prize Picks. Go to prizepicks.com/LockedOnNFL and use the code all lowercase, Locked On NFL, all one word, to win $50 instantly when you play $5. Make sure you check us out over on Amazon Music also. That's right. Locked On Jaguars is everywhere. I'm joined by my brother today, Travis Holmes, who's going to Travis D. Holmes. I don't want to forget that middle initial. You know, he put it in there for a reason. He wants you to know he ain't just Travis Holmes. He's Travis D. Holmes. Here's what we're going to discuss today on the show. My top coaches on Jags list. I know Trav has his too. We'll go over them and we'll even explain why. Why staff is so important with the new coach. Everybody's focused on the new coach, but they ain't focused on the staff. But they were so focused on the Jaguar staff, weren't they? All of these things are super important. But first, we're going to bury the lead. We're going to lead off with Trevor Lawrence speaks. And Trav, I don't know if you watched it live. I had to watch it recorded because I watched it 15 minutes after. Trevor said some very telling things on there, in my opinion.
That he did. And I know we're going to get into the main one. He never said anything wrong. He never he's a professional. He's absolutely been in his media training. So he said all the things in all the perfect ways and all the right ways. But that running game conversation, and specifically noting it, talking about the last few years, hey, that was a big one. That was a big little nugget.
It is big. The Jaguars running backs get hit as soon as they get the ball. I think they actually led the league in that. I don't look up all of those advanced metrics because I just use my eyes and my gut feel for it. There's no way to go. Now, you can criticize them all you want. You can say, well, what about this game where ETN went off? And what about that game when ETN went off? Well, go watch the film and see who they were playing. The other thing that you do is you don't judge a running game by an every now and then get off. You sound like Kendrick. Mr. Get Off, right? But you judge a running game by how consistently you can do it. You also judge a running game, and this is I'm gonna ring a bell for everybody here now. Red zone, you get inside the 5-yard line, you got to push that thing into the end zone. How many times have we seen the Jaguars get short yardage situations or get inside that 5-yard line and just start throwing the ball and have to rely on field goals or Doug Peterson going for it? I have been saying that nauseum for a long time. Having a running game that's just solid, like C+, I might be reaching when I say I think that's what the Jaguars are, but even that is not good enough if your intention is going deep into the playoffs and challenging and making for a run. There are a lot of people that heard his comments, Trav, yesterday, and they thought it was an indictment on scheme. And if there's one word I'm about sick of, it's scheme, because I think half the people who say scheme don't even realize what scheme is.
No, that's fact. No, again, scheme is fine. Like the same, you can have the same 3-4 scheme with one coach and that same 3-4 scheme with a different coach, and one coach is balling out of control and the other coach has a 32nd ranked defense in the league, and you're like, oh, scheme. It's not scheme. It's scheme married to personnel, and sometimes they have the wrong personnel for that scheme or the wrong scheme for that personnel. So it's not necessarily one or the other. They gotta go together.
Yeah, and then alignment and scheme aren't the same thing. I remember in Urban's, I think it might have been his initial press conference or one after that, when people were asking him what he wanted. Now, y'all will say, why are you blaming him, Urban? He was terrible. Urban Meyer is terrible in the NFL. You can't tell me that dude don't know football, because everywhere he's been in college, he won, right? And he had people delegated authority. I remember folks were saying, you 4-3 or 3-4. He said, what kind of scheme you run? He said, are you talking about scheme or alignment? Because those are two totally different things. Every 3-4 team isn't the same. Every 4-3 team is not the same. That's alignment. How you, like, for instance, the Jaguars, when they were a 3-4 team, in their base nickel alignment, they had an even front. They had 4 people up front. And so it's like, it gets really weird to me. I watched Belichick for years be considered a 3-4 guy. He always seemed like he had 4 down linemen. I just, my thing is folks have to understand that most of these things that are problems are personnel issues. And when Shad said this is something I want to tap in with you too. After, we talked about what Trevor said. When Shad Khan said we're the most predictable team in the league, folks thought scheme, play calling. I thought talent, because you put yourself in a box when you can't do certain things. Like Trevor said, we couldn't run. So that was the problem with everything. So when you can't run, the main reason you can't run is because you can't move people. You can have the most basic scheme in the world with really good play. And I think Shad said it. Shad says you can't be predictable unless you, and when he said it, I almost fell out of my chair. Remember, he said you can't be a predictable team unless you have 22 very good players or great players. And I'm thinking right, and look at the dude who's sitting over there that's supposed to go. Is Baltimore tricking people? I'm just trying to figure out, is Jim Harbaugh tricking people out with the Chargers and he's in the AFC? Sean Payton, is that a whole bunch of trickery, Kel?
Nah, so you hitting it on the head right now, because I had the exact same immediate response. Like, it was a gag reflex. Like, I just had, you can't not have that response as soon as it says. And I'm like, all right, so someone told you to say that. I'm happy they did, but do you understand what you're saying?
Yeah.
Do you not have better players? Then why don't you have better players? Are we asking those questions? All right, cool. So you can't move guys, and you don't have the better players, so you're forcing your coaches to then be magicians. Basically, you're forcing them to ask guys to do things that they can't do because they don't have the skill set to do those things, to just be better than they are. And you are giving them limited players to do above average things to lift up your GM, who was giving you just limited or incomplete guys. That is an unfortunate situation for the coaching staff and the general manager. Like, everybody's failing each other in that situation. And again, Doug did well in some ways. He was put into a rough situation, but he also didn't adjust well. But also, Balky is giving him limited players on that offensive line who may be great at blocking and pass blocking, but not so great at run blocking. And you got to figure out how to make that work as a coach. Well, he needed a run game and he didn't have it. I don't know what to tell him. Like, that's things. So
the other part of that is, wasn't nothing wrong with Doug Peterson's scheme when he won in 2017. And I know people will be like, well, Wig, that's 7 years ago. A lot of people are running the same stuff they were running 7 years. You think Andy Reid switched everything up? You think Kyle Shanahan or Sean McVay have changed a whole lot? No, the difference with Doug Peterson is he had Jason Peters, Lane Johnson, and Jason Kelsey. Those are three, probably at least two, probably three first ballot Hall of Famers on that line. I mean, it has something to do with your ability to move people. When I watch Detroit, I know everybody sits there and watch those little hook and ladders and, linemen in catching passes and the misdirection that happens every now and then. You know why that stuff works? That stuff works because before they start doing misdirection and before they do a jet sweep, they beat you into submission the other way, and you're just so focused on stopping that. Now it's like, oh my God, now he does this. It doesn't start with trickery. It doesn't start with not being predictable. It starts with, you can know exactly what we're about to do. That's how goal line is, right? You know exactly what they're going to do on 4th and 1. You know that. Can you stop it or can you not? And can you impose your will on people or can you not? That's what it comes down to.
But it is interesting though, because there's different philosophies on this, especially if you're talking to someone who watches a lot of college football. Because a lot of these, you may have a team like maybe a Boise or one of the smaller, FBS schools who they have to use a lot of trickery and they have to use a lot of these things because they just aren't good enough. They just don't have the personnel. They don't have, like, you see a lot of that. But if you want to bring that into the NFL, hey man, we don't have limitations on scholarships. We don't have limitations on money. You have every equal opportunity with all these other NFL franchises to get yourself as good as they are by hitting on your draft picks and by not wasting money in free agency. You don't, like, if you want to have trickeration and all these things, that's great to your point. But where are your dogs on that offensive line? I had that argument on Hacker After Dark last night. Is if you want to say Trent Baalke has been good in the draft, then all right, cool. You can make that argument. I won't make that argument personally. I think he's been just maybe barely average to just below average. If you want to make that argument, cool. But show me the All Pros. Show me the Pro Bowlers that he brought in, because every single Pro Bowler I see right now was from Dave Caldwell. All three of them. Like,
Right.
So for me personally, I'm just like, all right, so on that offensive line, when you need efficiency, when you need 3 yards in the cloud of dust, 4 yards, 5 yards, when you need that touchdown in the red zone, where are the guys that you brought in that's going to be able to give me that? Because if you can't give me that, I'm not worried as much about that splash play that you're going to give me, because we're going to lose 21-7. Like, I need that efficiency.
Right. And I just think that that's the part of this that folks don't really want to pay attention to, man. I just think that the people that think Trevor isn't good, they don't want to hear any reason or excuse that might give him a mulligan. And that's the thing. It's like, nah, he stinks, Wig. He ain't that good. And that's just, I think there's an incomplete on that. And by the way, all of the guys that Balky gave extensions to, I would have done it too. Tyson Campbell, Josh Hines-Allen, and Trevor Lawrence. Ain't nobody around the league considering none of those guys. Even Josh, people don't consider those dudes top 8, 9, 10 players in the league, but they're making that kind of money. So you got to look at it. The best player on this team, in my opinion, is Brian Thomas Jr. He is already, in my opinion, the best player on this team. He's not the most important, that's Trevor, but he is the best player on this team. I want to talk about fans, man, and why I try to tell fans that they do matter. At least fans in other cities matter, not so much here. I'm going to play a clip in segment 2 from our Locked On Squad shows where guys whose coaches got fired will sit here and come on here and tell you, yeah, they pay attention to what happens to their brand when people leave games early and start booing. We'll talk about that and more here in a second on Locked On Jaguars. All right, today's show is sponsored in part by our friends over at Intuit TurboTax. This is a message from our sponsor, Intuit TurboTax. Are you tired of endless waiting, wondering about your taxes and worrying about it? Nah, that's the thing of the past, you see, because taxes don't need to be complicated or stressful. TurboTax is here to change the game by matching you with a TurboTax expert who can get to work on your return right away. No more waiting for answers. No more wondering if you're missing out on deductions. I don't care if you have 1 form or 20 forms, TurboTax expert give your taxes the undivided attention while you get real-time updates on the progress, so you can focus on what really matters and you won't have to lift a finger, but you'll get the peace of mind knowing that your taxes are being handled by the pros. Ready for stress-free taxes and the most money back guaranteed? Head on over to turbotax.com today and get matched with your expert who's ready to take your taxes off your plate so you can focus on your day. Only available with TurboTax Live full service, real-time updates, only in the iOS mobile app. See guaranteed details at turbotax.com/guarantees. And today's show is sponsored and brought in part to you by our friends over at Prize Picks. I love having fun during the regular season, but the playoff time can be fun too, man. All you got to do is going over to Prize Picks, because this is what they do. If you love football and want a chance to win real money while watching the games, Prize Picks is the place for you. It's the best way to turn your sports opinions into cash with daily fantasy projections. With Prize Picks, you must simply pick more or less on player stats like total passing yards or rushing yards, and for a shot to win up to 1,000 times your money. You heard me, 1,000 times your money. I've been playing for a while now, and I'm having a blast. I have a good time all the time. I can guarantee you, I got Louis on here today, and Saquon Barkley is going to be a big reason why Philly goes forward. So you can count on those touches and possibly that more. All right, here's a special offer for Locked On NFL listeners. Download the app today and use the code Locked On NFL to get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. That's Prize Picks. Man, run your game. All right, man, we're rolling along here on Locked On Jaguars, where it's your team every day. We thank you for making us your first listen. Got my man Travis D. Holmes. Travis, tell me your name of your podcast, man. We got to do that. We don't let people not promote. Tell them where they can find you.
Yes, the Duval Dive on YouTube. And please like and subscribe us. I mean, this thing has been a great ride, and it's growing really quickly. Writing for BigCatCountry.com, the SB Nation's Jacksonville Jaguars fan site, and Travis D. Holmes on all the socials, man.
All right. Before we get to why staff is so important with the new coach, I want to let y'all know that fans are important too. And I'm going to use something. We have a show called the AFC. We have AFC squad and NFC squad. Right now for the playoffs, those two are combined because, there's only a few teams left, right? So listen to our squad show and watch how the other teams that are having difficulties, like the Jaguars, watch how these guys that cover for Locked On, they cover these teams. Watch how they talk about what the owners think of their brand when the team is bad.
I happen to like Gerard Mayo very much, and I do believe that he does have something to contribute to a team in the future. And I do believe he will find another home somewhere, whether it be in college or whether it be in the NFL. But for the Patriots, this was the right move to make. Now they have to make sure that the coach that they bring in not only embodies everything they want on the field, but is able to handle all of the extracurricular aspects of the job that were just a little bit too big for Gerard at this point.
I'm so glad, Mike, that you started with the fan part of this, because I think that is such an underrated piece of why these decisions get made. And I don't even think it's a bad thing. Like when your fan base does not trust your coach, and let's not forget, Mike, the last week of the season, they had a chance to roll over to get the number 1 overall pick. Yep. There was not organizational alignment. They go out and they win that football game for reasons that just like defy explanation. It's untenable. Right. And the team is made up of players who live in the community. They interact with fans every day. They know, by the way, what's said on Locked On Patriots and Locked On Ravens and Locked On Broncos and Locked On Cowboys. If the players aren't listening, their families are, their friends are. They know what's being said. And when it becomes toxic, I think an ownership group is well within its rights to just say, the fans don't trust this coach. And unless we think he's Vince Lombardi reincarnated, we can find another guy. They can find another Gerard Mayo. And guess what? Like Mike Vrabel might be a better option anyway. He might have been a better option to start with.
Yeah, that's exactly what happened here in New Orleans. The ownership group, Gail Benson, who's the owner of the New Orleans Saints and governor of the New Orleans Pelicans here in town, she and her ownership group said, man, they really don't like him. Like that was a big part. That was a big part. It's like they saw the stand start to empty. They heard the boos for the first time. You don't hear boos in New Orleans very often when it comes to the Saints, at least. And so like that shift and for a team like the New England Patriots, it's been so long on top of its game and so long on top of the game for things to shift the way that it shifted over the course of the past few years. Yeah, you are going to hear that fan vote.
Now, listening to that and then thinking about all the Jaguar fans that wore clown suits and facial paint and emojis, and they kind of started to do it again, and then Trent Baalke is still here, tells you that I think owners for other teams care about what fans think about it. I'm not so sure that Shad really does.
I think I'm in agreement with you. I think Shad just treats this thing a little bit different than a lot of other NFL owners. And I don't know if that's I want to say I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing, but at this point, the results on the field speak for themselves. The organization shows you, the results show you that it's a bad thing at this current moment in time. Like, I don't want an owner who's going to bend at the will of the fans at all times, because, I mean, again, that would be the worst thing, but there has to be some kind of a middle ground. And I think it's pretty clear that from anyone who pays attention to the Jacksonville Jaguars on even a reasonable level, you can say that, hey, all right, this probably isn't the best situation for this team and for this franchise having Trent Baalke involved. I don't think that's a crazy take.
It's not a crazy take. And here's the thing. Too many times, it's almost like if you're going to go on strike, you don't want the replacements, right? If the fans really let Khan know, look, man, we're loyal, we're patient, but good God, this is terrible, man. We got to pause. I can't spend my income and have my heart broken and my heart hurting. I'm going to pull back. The threat, and it hasn't come from Shad, but it's always been a media threat. The media threat has always been, if y'all don't support them, they're going to move. So it's like the fans here is a little bit feel like they got to support a bad product and act like it's raining when it really ain't raining. Somebody's just peeing on their head. And so the thing is that's the difference between here, and that's what made me call Shad out, because I thought it was really, really tone deaf when he brought Baalke up there and said some of the things that they said. They're looking for a coach. Everybody's talking about the head coach. The head coach is super, super important. But I want people to realize also what else is important is a staff. Trav, if people around here don't realize how important the staff, like who a coach is going to bring, I don't care if your head coach is the play caller. They do that 3 hours a game. Offense and defense usually split. That's an hour and a half, 17 times a year. You need a teacher. You need a communicator. You need somebody that's going to hold them accountable. You need teaching, and that comes with the staff. If the staff isn't important, then why have Jaguar fans been telling me for 2 years? All I heard was press Taylor, press Taylor, press Taylor, press Taylor. I'm telling. If it's not important, imagine this. The reason why you're not going to hire a coach probably here who's been a head coach at this level, they're more than likely going to give somebody their chance for the first time. You're watching their team play and you're going, I want that on my team, right? So you're paying attention to basically what a staff member is doing and not the head coach. When you watch the Lions, y'all ain't going to get Dan Campbell. Y'all watching Aaron Glenn and you watching Brian Johnson. So when one of them take over here, our staff will be just as important as the staff members that you're trying to go and get right now from other teams.
Yeah, you are preaching to the choir. You are preaching right now in general. Like you are actually pulling one of my lingering questions for the Liam Cohen coach profile that's going to drop on Big Cat Country tomorrow morning at 7 a.m. That was actually one of my big items is like, hey, we got these 2 first-year coaches, Ben Johnson and Liam Cohen. All right, cool. Have they built up those kind of relationships that's going to be necessary to build up and establish or, a staff that has true experience? Or are you going to have first timers all across the board? Like, I truly feel like they're so close and how good they both are at calling plays that might be the main difference of who a general manager is going to choose to go with is like, hey, what is your plan for these guys? And do I feel comfortable with those guys more than I feel comfortable with the plan for the other guy that the other guy has? So that's going to be an interesting one.
No doubt it is going to be interesting. I happen to think that Liam Cohen is very, very connected. I think if you look at his whole resume, he probably has just as much experience as anybody on these things, except, of course, Pete Carroll and all of those guys. Relationships do matter. And the reason why Cohen got the Tampa Bay job is because people were very, very excited about, look, the dude got Will Levis drafted in the top 50. So he must be pretty damn good. He turned, and Baker hasn't missed a beat, even though, he lost Dave Canales. So I think it's important, but I also think the connections and the pedigree that these guys have that go way back also gives them a chance to be able to field a good staff. We're going to talk about that more. Here's the last thing we're going to go over. We're going to name our top coaches, and we're going to tell why. Guys on the Jags list. Trav and I'll do that in just a second in the third and final segment on Locked On Jaguars. Today's show is brought to you in part by FanDuel. That's right, man. We've been playing FanDuel for a long time. From big upsets to game-winning drives, the NFL playoffs are better with FanDuel. Because right now, new customers can bet $5 and get $200 in bonus bets guaranteed. That's $200 in bonus bets, win or lose. The FanDuel app gives you everything you need for live bets, same-game parlays, and so much more. Listen, visit the website and all you got to do is you're going to get all the information you need. You can get the latest on the injuries. You can get the historical impact when these two teams have played. Very good analysis to help you out on FanDuel. Just visit FanDuel.com to join today and get started with $200 in bonus bets. That's FanDuel.com. Make the playoff season unforgettable with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL. All right, we're rolling, man. This is a Friday show here. I got my boy Trav in the house. We're getting ready to watch some playoff games that include coaches that the Jaguars are watching, but it does not include the Jacksonville Jaguars because they only won 4 games this year, as you all know. All right, on this list, Trav, I want you to tell me, give me your top 4, and as you go through, as a matter of fact, go 4 to 1 and tell me what you like about each one of those guys. And then I'm going to ask you to do this. Guys who aren't in your top 4, tell me why they're not just one dude, and this is the one dude you kind of want them to stay away from.
All right, so we're going 4 to 1. That's going to be an interesting one because I have Robert Salah as my 4th guy, and I know people have some trepidation about Robert just because of everything that happened in New York. But again, if you want someone who's going to be a culture setter, someone who's going to be a leader of men, if you want to give him just a moderate amount of power and organization as far as that's concerned, I believe that he would be able to make you a tough team, very similar to a Mike Vrabel. And that's because of that. I put him as my 4th guy. Aaron Glenn, along those same lines. He's my third guy in line, but he doesn't have the quote unquote warts that Salah has as far as his time in New York. And Liam Cohen. And that Ben Johnson, Liam Cohen thing, I think I'm actually going to flip this. I think Ben Johnson is actually my second guy at this point. And that's a hard thing to say, but it is what it is. Again, I had to do that deep dive on both Ben Johnson and Liam Cohen for the Big Cat Country series. And man, Ben Johnson is such a creative genius as far as the way he calls plays, as far as how he just organizes and structures that Detroit Lions offense. But again, they've never had to do it without this top line. They've never had to do it with serious injuries to that offense. I've seen him do amazing things with an amazing roster, but I've seen with Liam Cohen, him do amazing things with a limited roster and an amazing roster. And that has to count for something. And because he does have nearly, he has almost double the coaching experience as Kevin O'Connell had when he was hired, and it still has that same Sean McVay link. For that reason alone, Liam Cohen is actually my favorite guy.
I like it. I like it a lot. He's number 3 for me, but I'm going to go in the same order. Salah is number 4, and Salah for me is 4th because sometimes when you get that stink put on you in another organization, you come here and you say, okay, I ain't gonna make the same mistakes again, right? And he really didn't make any mistakes, but I don't think at his next stop he's gonna be the same guy that the Jets hire. I think that Jet experience kind of made him sort of weary, and it might tighten him up a little bit. And even though it made him look good when they can't win when he left. So that's one thing, but I do like him. I liked him when he was here. I remember that, and I'm down for what he's going to bring in defensively and how he's going to implement that. And I think it gives a chance for somebody to be the head coach of the offense if you get him. Aaron Glenn is my number 2, so I'll go with Liam Cohen at 3. The thing about Cohen that exists here is the unknown. What you do know is he is really, really good at developing quarterbacks and generating offense. I don't know what kind of a leader he is, but he is the head coach of one side of the ball. So I do like him, and he's the one that I feel if the Jaguars get him, it will be our own thing. It won't be copycatting Detroit like the 2 guys ahead of him are. But that being said, number 2 for me is Aaron Glenn, but it is very, very close because I am a leader of men type, and I think he's played the game. Doug played the game. But Aaron has played the game and he has a different communication style. I really do believe that he is also so respected around the league that there will be a ton of guys that want to play for him. I'm going to tell you who I actually like with him as the offensive coordinator. And it's going to shock some of y'all. It shouldn't, but it's going to. Nobody has a problem taking a quality control coach or a wide receiver coach from the Rams, or some people take tight ends coaches from the Rams and 49ers and make them coaches, right? I think Keenan McCardell should be the offensive coordinator if Glenn goes out. And if he gets the job here, I like McCardell. I think Keenan McCardell can be a play caller. In fact, Keenan McCardell might be one of the smartest football players I've ever spoken with in my life. And I think he's a sponge. I think he continues to develop wide receivers at a very high level. Of course, Stephon Diggs was chosen late. What he did with Thielen and all of those guys. And now I ain't even talking about the starters in Minnesota. I'm talking about number 83, that slot receiver. I mean, he nailed it. And he got these guys playing at a super, super high level. He's been with, around, and underneath. And see, the disadvantage that he has is, guess what? He has actually coached underneath guys who are play callers. So he didn't have a chance to really do that. But I do believe Keenan McCardell has I think he has the stuff made to be a head coach eventually. And I think it's just too bad people have been overlooking him. So I'll go ahead and go with Johnson at number 1. And the reason why is because I think what he has done with Jared Goff is exactly what needs to be done with Trevor Lawrence. Insulate him, do things that fit his skill set to a T. I can see Trevor Lawrence playing exactly like Jared Goff, but doing it with a better deep ball.
Oof. That's an interesting one Because I know Jared Goff is so good on time. He's so good in rhythm. Like he's such a tempo passer that's like, oh man, they're so close to being there. I just want to see it from Trevor first. That's the only piece, because I think Trevor plays in a lot of ways closer to Baker than he plays to Goff, because of that rhythm part and that pocket presence piece. So that's going to be an interesting one. I don't know.
I think Trevor's capable of it. I just think now that he's had a couple of concussions and he's in a sling and he's been hurt, we need to get some of that running out of his game. I think we need to let him run a little bit, but we need to focus on. We need to defocus on the fact that he has these wheels he's got. He's starting to get older now. He's a girl dad now. We don't need him running around. We need him protected, man. And I think that'll be better for the team. Make sure you check out Locked On NFL twice a day. Yep, Tyler rolling early in the morning. The man will hit you with a double shot of espresso right upside your head, and then I'll come slide through in the barbershop, and we'll give it to you like you can't get nowhere else. And I'm going to tell you what, we use the local experts that know these teams like no one else, so make sure you tap into Locked On NFL each and every day. For my man Travis Holmes, Travis D. Holmes, who joined me on short notice, I'm Tony Wiggins. Y'all have a very, very good weekend and enjoy the football games. If there's any news on the coaching front, I will definitely fire up an emergency pod. But I do believe what's going to happen is we're going to be going into this all through probably the middle of next week. So for that, I am Tony Wiggins here. Take care of each other, and we'll do the same. Thank you for tuning in to Locked On Jaguars.